What's going on, guys? Dare here with Fantasy Football Advice, coming at you with another fantasy football video. Today, we got a good one for you guys. In today's video, as you know, it's Monday, it's mock draft time, and although Nick is usually the person to do the mock draft Mondays, he will be back tomorrow, so if you're missing out on his content, you'll have a nice new video from him as early as tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that. But with that said, though, we do have a jam-packed slate ahead for you guys. The mock draft we're doing today is a 12-team ESPN draft, a PPR draft from the 4 spot, and in this draft, I'm going to be utilizing some of the free tools available on our website. So in today's video, we'll be showcasing the ADP tab, which if you guys have been under a rock or maybe you just haven't had a chance to check it out, we do have a compiled list of every draftable player and where they're being drafted on which specific platform. That's right, Yahoo, NFL, FFPC, we got it all, and we'll let you know exactly where these players are being drafted, and you'd be surprised at how much it varies from platform over platform. With that being said, though, just a quick shout out and reminder that if you do enjoy these videos, the best way to show your support by hitting that like button. As you know, we're on the road to 100k subscribers. Right now we're at 96k, so we're inching close. So for those of you who may not yet have subscribed, consider taking today as an opportunity to do so. And if you enjoy, don't forget to hit that like button. With that being said, though, it's time to move over to our stat of the day. And yesterday's stat of the day was which wide receiver was the oldest player to catch a receiving touchdown last season. The correct answer was actually Larry Fitzgerald. Congratulations to Joseph Guidry, the first to get this right on YouTube. And as for Twitter, at BrianIzzo21. Once again, congratulations to both of you. But as for today's stat of the day, Darren Waller and Travis Kelce led all tight ends in the area of receiving yardage from week 9 on last season. Which player ranked third just behind them? Once again, Travis Kelce and Darren Waller led all tight ends in the area of receiving yardage from week 9 on last season. Which player ranked third just behind them? Leave your answer in the comment section down below. We'll be happy to let you know who wins in tomorrow's video. Alright guys, really quickly, just want to circle back just to inform you on what my plans are for us today. We'll actually be going to our website, focusing on the free tabs, the ADP tab, the trending tab. We're going to use those to our advantage to help boost our production in the mock draft. Before we do, though, I do think it is going to be vitally important for us to, as a unit, take a look at this tab and see how it is going to apply to us, how we can use it to benefit us in a mock draft. So up on your screen, you're going to see a giant list of players that looks very similar to our rankings. In fact, though, it is not our rankings. This is going to be the compilation of all of the players in the ADP of the various platforms that they're on. As you can see here, Underdog, we have Yahoo, NFL Network, ESPN, FFPC. These are all very common in the fantasy football industry. If we're trying to identify which players on the platform we're drafting on are coming in at good values or bad values, all we have to do is go over to these final 2 columns, find and identify the platform that you will be drafting on, and then just filter it from there. If you want to find the players that you're likely going to get a good deal on, you're going to look for best values. If you want the players that you probably should be avoiding, that's going to be on the worst values, the very last row. So just to kind of give ourselves an idea, let's go through a few of these players ourselves, see how that can apply to us, then see if we can use that in our mock draft to help benefit us. So looking at the best values for ESPN, right off the bat, we have Alvin Kamara, who is the best value in ESPN out of all platforms. He's coming in at the 6th overall pick. And with Alvin Kamara, a player that is arguably a top 3 running back, I think some people are even taking him 1st overall. Anyone getting him at the RB6 or 6 overall is getting a fantastic deal. And it looks like ESPN has him at that spot at his ADP. So for me, I'm really interested to see what other players they have up there that are taking up those early spots, because I don't know how many players are much safer or have the same amount of upside as Alvin Kamara. With me drafting at the 4th overall pick, Alvin Kamara is a player I'm strongly suggesting to draft. If it's up to me only, I know that's the pick I would make. Typically though, if you're drafting 4th overall, you're likely going to be stuck with Derrick Henry. It would go it would go C-Mac, it would then go Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, and then 4th we're seeing Derrick Henry typically go. So in a typical draft, I wouldn't expect to get Kamara, but from what we're seeing here, it looks like that might be a possibility. I also like where Darren Waller's going. He is a very good value. He's being drafted 7th overall in one platform. We also see him drafted as a top 24 player on the other platforms, and the only one, he's actually being drafted 36 overall, which is on the cusp of being, dare I say, a 4th round pick. So with him being that valuable or that cheap, I think Darren Waller's a player we strongly have to go after. And with Alvin Kamara being a premier running back and then a premier tight end with one of our next 2 picks, I think we're going to be potentially set up to have a mock draft where we try out the RB anchor draft strategy. For those of you that don't know what that strategy is, you basically rely on a elite running back like C-Mac, Dalvin Cook, or Kamara to put up most of the production for your RB position. Then you abandon the RB position for the remainder of the draft, or at least until the middle or later rounds. And in those rounds where you're not drafting running backs, you're loading up on elite talents at other positions. Hopefully I'll get a chance to go through that and show you guys how that works out, and if we think and can agree it's a good deal. But before we do, let's continue down this list. So now it appears that we also have a lot of quarterbacks that we can choose from at good values. I'm seeing Kyler Murray here and Josh Allen, both best values on ESPN. It's a massive opportunity there that also aligns with the RB anchor draft strategy. Really excited to kind of see if I can put that together. Not trying to have my expectations too high, though. This is one of my first mock drafts ever on the platform, or at least for this season. So I don't want to come in a little overconfident. I'm not sure how it'll go, and these are going to be live drafters. Not sure if they're going to all auto draft by round 7 or if they'll stick it out, but we have to be prepared for everything. Looking for other values of players that I'm also targeting. I'm not really seeing anybody stick out to me. Trey Lance, with him coming off the board on ESPN, outside the top 200, it looks like he's virtually free for us. That means Lance is going to be a player I will be drafting with my final pick. That's what I'll do in both this mock draft as well as my actual draft on ESPN, because Trey Lance, he's a player who, if starting for that offense, is going to be wonderful for fantasy. Now, if I do have Kyler Murray, will that really be worth drafting him? I mean, getting him at the last pick, maybe you could trade him if he does end up working out, or maybe trade Kyler and replace him in your starting lineup with Trey Lance if Trey Lance gets to start. I mean, it's a bit of a headache, but I'll definitely take him because I do think he has a bit more upside than the players that will be remaining by the time I make it to that stage of the draft. With that being said, though, I think why don't we just leave this up for now? We'll revisit it again just to kind of hammer it in towards the tail end of the video, but we'll also keep this up as we go through the draft. So without further ado, let's get right into it. All right, guys, we're currently sitting at the 4th overall selection. Looking here up on the board, pretty standard stuff here. Christian McCaffrey up at the 1 spot. No doubt that's going to be the 1st overall pick, followed by Dalvin Cook, Saquon Barkley. We were wondering which players were ranked ahead of Alvin Kamara to push him down to the 6th overall pick, and the answer is Travis Kelce as well as Saquon Barkley. I'm all on board with drafting Travis Kelce, but I think Saquon Barkley is a bit aggressive with that ranking. The draft's already started, so my pick is up in just a few spots. Like I had mentioned, though, I am going to be taking Alvin Kamara with this 1st pick, so not too much analysis that really needs to be done there. No questions as to what I'm doing heading into this draft, right? I think we all have an understanding that I'm going to be attempting the RB anchor draft strategy, which involves securing that high-end RB1, that would be Kamara in this case, and then abandoning running back by focusing on drafting receivers, hopefully a premier tight end as well, and hopefully a top-of-the-line quarterback, and that should hopefully negate the lack of production from the running back position and make up for it so much that I'm getting a weekly advantage at other positions. Like I also mentioned, though, I do have up the value list, so as we're going through the draft, we'll go round by round and see if there's any players in that round that we should keep an eye on, or in the upcoming rounds that we should be aware of as good values. Remember, Travis Etienne is a player that I do want to keep an eye on. George Kittle as well as Darren Waller, 2 of those premier tight ends coming in the 3rd round. Wow, that just screams value to me. Justin Jefferson's a player 211. That means you can get him nearly a 3rd round pick. That's insane. If he falls 1 spot, he's a 3rd round pick. I'll take that any day from a player like Justin Jefferson, especially what we saw from him in his rookie season. Right now it is the back of the 1st round. Just to give you guys an update on what we've seen so far out of the 1st round, nothing too crazy. We have mostly running backs. That's going to be typical from what you see in most drafts. Nothing really out of the ordinary. Jonathan Taylor made it in the 1st round. I think he's going to be a player you might see fall. Derrick Henry went right behind Alvin Kamara. That's going to be a personal preference choice. I chose Alvin Kamara just for the receiving ceiling, this being a full PPR league. Derrick Henry not having that receiving upside, I don't know if I would feel confident in using a player like Derrick Henry in this RB anchor draft strategy, because you have to rely so much on the one player to produce. And don't get me wrong, Derrick Henry is a premier option at the position. Just with this being a PPR league, I do prefer a running back with a receiving floor. Now, my pick is actually about to come up. We are going to have to make a decision point right here. Looking here, we have 2 premier options at running back as well as 2 premier options at wide receiver. Starting with the running back position, we have both Joe Mixon as well as we have David Montgomery. You know how high we are on David Montgomery, but even with us being very high on him, in order to draft him at this spot, that would be an extreme reach. So I think we can eliminate him first off. that leaves Joe Mixon, who would be a strong running back candidate, somebody who would alleviate pressure from your RB1 to produce, because you know each and every week Joe Mixon's going to get the volume. However, I do still want to do the RB anchor draft strategy, which would mean we would have to avoid a running back here. And there really is some solid options at wide receiver. Looking over here, we have AJ Brown and Justin Jefferson, two players that are almost guaranteed to be wide receiver ones. I know nothing's guaranteed in the NFL, especially with injuries, but if these two players play 16 games, I find it really difficult to believe that neither one of them would finish inside the top 12. And I think that's all but guaranteed from them this season. And with the type of upside that they bring as individual contributors, each one of them could potentially finish top 3 if everything goes their way. Looking at my pick after this, we only have about 6 spots from when I take this first player to when my next pick is. There is a possibility that if we're keeping all of these 4 players, that David Montgomery, Joe Mixon, Justin Jefferson, and AJ Brown all in the conversation, and it's possible that by the time those 6 picks go by, there's one of these players remaining. So I'm going to take the player who has the highest ADP here, the player that's also, consensus highest out of all of these players, and I don't think it's cut and dry, and I don't think it's a guarantee, but AJ Brown is going to be the player I'm taking here. My hope is that Justin Jefferson's the player that falls to me in about 6 picks. His ADP on average in ESPN is the second pick, the 11th pick in the second round, so typically he hasn't made it that far in drafts, but we can't rule it out. Some other players that we should be considering if Justin Jefferson doesn't make it back to us: do we take David Montgomery here and completely throw away that RB anchor strategy we've been harpering on so much? Another option we have is George Kittle if he still remains. Darren Waller unfortunately did get drafted. Travis Kelce, he was taken in the first 4 picks. I wouldn't really trust any other tight end outside of those 3, so I really think it's important to get one of them if you can. I'm not sure we'll even have the option to, but it's definitely something we always have to have in the back of our minds, or else we're going to lose out on value. We're going to miss out on those players, because I know other people in our leagues, they are putting their full attention into those players and hoping somebody slips up on them. Believe it or not, though, we have made it to the 3rd round, and Justin Jefferson is still here with his projected ADP of the 11th pick in the 2nd round. Now he is the 4th pick in the 3rd round, and that's exactly where I'm going to be able to snag him. Unfortunately, though, George Kittle's still here, and it's a difficult choice between George Kittle and Justin Jefferson. I really just don't think you could ever pass up Justin Jefferson at this spot. First of all, we already had mentioned that, and right here, I'll pull it up on the screen, that Justin Jefferson is one of the better values on ESPN that you could possibly get. There's no other platform Justin Jefferson is going this late in drafts. The spot he's going in ESPN is the 11th pick in the 2nd round. You've heard me repeat that several times. We got him as the 4th pick in the 3rd round. Okay, so five plus spots lower than an already absurd ADP. We basically stole him. I don't even know if we could consider it realistic, but we're playing with actual humans, so I'm just gonna let it slide. We do have several picks until our next draft spot, so this will be a good time to kind of check that ADP list that we're talking about, seeing if there's any upcoming values we should keep an eye on. I know I'd mentioned players like Travis Etienne. Oh, you know what? I also mentioned Justin Jefferson as well as Alvin Kamara, 2 players that are premier values that we both were able to lock down simply because we were drafting on ESPN. We could do something very similar with the values of the other platforms if we were drafting on those, but I think the next player I have to keep an eye out for is Travis Etienne, and looking for him in the draft, he is still available, so I will keep him in the back of my mind. I do want to also look for other players for my upcoming pick in the 5th round. This would be either a quarterback. 5th round's where we start to target quarterback. Like I had mentioned, with the top 3 tight ends already being drafted, I don't think it's really worth targeting a tight end. Really have like players like Logan Thomas, Noah Fant, TJ Hawkinson, Mark Andrews. Don't get me wrong, those all have a lot of upside, but nowhere near the amount of upside as Travis Kelce, George Kittle, etc. There's really just no other tight ends that can match that type of upside, so I'd prefer just to wait on the position as a whole. Don't get me wrong though, quarterback is definitely a position I'm open for in this 5th round, but tight end really not so much. I'm sorry, I kept saying 5th round pick, but I meant 4th round pick. So far our options at running back, pretty thin. I'm not going to say I'm completely opposed to drafting a running back. If there was a great value here, I'd be fine taking it, and I guess moving away from the RB anchor strategy, especially since we missed out on a premier tight end. I think we were doing a weaker variation of that, if we can still call it that. But at running back, Chase Edmonds you have as one of the top options. Typically, Edmonds, though, should be in like the RB30 conversation. There's a running back I know that I've been much more fond of that should be going much earlier than him that I don't see right here. Actually, you know what? I do actually see him, and maybe you'll recognize the name because I had mentioned him before we started this mock draft. It is Travis Etienne of the Jacksonville Jaguars. You know, it's very possible that drafting him there was a mistake, not because he's not worth where I drafted him, which is the 46th overall pick. I still think when you compare that to the other platforms, that's right in line, if not a good value. But I mean, looking here back at the report, Travis Etienne was a player on ESPN that was falling to the 76th overall pick, and I drafted him like right at the 50th overall pick. So I think I kind of got a little overzealous on that. I didn't have a ton of time. I'll blame myself there. That's a lack of experience on this platform. Also, you know, these are just learning curves we're gonna have to make when making these types of adjustments mid-draft. So we'll try to make up for that by getting a good value on our 5th round pick. Right now we have 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers. As for running back, Alvin Kamara, Travis Etienne, very happy with that. And as for wide receiver, AJ Brown and Justin Jefferson, extremely happy with that as well. We'll see which players we could potentially bolster our unit with. None of them would technically be starters. They could be a flex position player. So really, we could sacrifice a bit of safety on this pick if we wanted to. I think we should consider a quarterback, but I do see one player that really sticks out above them all. It is a player we were very high on. He was a player featured in yesterday's video. With my pick just 2 picks away now, I'm praying that this does not come off the board. It's Cooper Kupp of the LA Rams. I didn't want to say it out loud in case you could hear me, but the guy's auto drafting right now, so it doesn't matter. And we got it. Cooper Kupp is on our team. That's insane value. Okay. If we lost anything on Travis Etienne, we definitely made it up with Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp's a player, as you know, we have ranked as the wide receiver 20. We're already well outside the top 50 picks now. So getting a player like Cooper Kupp, who's literally going to fill my flex spot, and he has top 5 upside, that's insane. I think every player on my roster right now has top 5 upside. I mean, the only one really that's unlikely to hit that ceiling is going to be Travis Etienne. But, you know, Travis Etienne also being a rookie running back has history behind him with that pushing him to produce. He's also on an offense that's ascending. Now, unfortunately, they have Carlos Hyde as well as James Robinson, both listed above him on the depth chart. But with the draft capital invested in him, I wouldn't be surprised if he does exceed where he's currently ranked on the depth chart right now. With that said, though, this is going to be where we have our short turnaround time. Only 6 draft spots separate us from our last pick to this upcoming pick. And with this pick, I know I mentioned I wanted to get a quarterback last round, but I think this round, if I don't get one, I'm really going to be bargain bin shopping. And at best, I might get Ryan Tannehill, but I might get stuck with an even worse option. So I am going to try to make it a point to grab one of these elite guys before I exit my 6th round pick. Right now, the quarterback I have my eye on, there's Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Tom Brady, Ryan Tannehill in that order. That's not the order I would necessarily have them ranked at all, actually, but I think out of those, easily to me, it's Lamar Jackson. And then I'd probably put, it's close between Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson. You know, with the news of Aaron Rodgers returning, also getting Randall Cobb, you know, that might actually be an area we could increase him. I haven't increased him because I always expected him to play. So maybe I should give him a bump. But at this point, I think I would lean Russell Wilson between those two. But best case scenario, of course, there's only 4 or 5 picks until mine, is that nobody drafts a quarterback. And I'm able to just take Lamar Jackson, who unfortunately was just drafted. So we now have Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson to choose from. So that's going to be a really difficult choice for me. If this league was anything like a 6-point passing touchdown league, if it had anything to do like completion percentage works against you, all those weird quarterback rules, I'd probably lean Aaron Rodgers because he's just so darn efficient. Don't get me wrong, Russell Wilson is extremely efficient too, especially in the area of touchdown rate. But Aaron Rodgers, I mean, he's always going to have, virtually low volume compared to other quarterbacks because he's just so darn efficient that he can just get it all done with just so much less volume than others. But he did actually get drafted literally 1 pick before me, but I'm thrilled because I still was able to grab Russell Wilson. Probably not the best person you want at quarterback, but at the same time, it's much better than heading into or exiting my draft with a player like, Tom Brady. Don't get me wrong, Brady's probably one of the better options out of the quarterbacks that remain now, but I got Russell Wilson. He's definitely going to be able to compete with those top dogs, even the Kyler Murray, Josh Allen type. types, any given week in a matchup head-to-head, Russell Wilson has the potential to beat those guys. I mean, Tom Brady, he might do that type of thing once a year, but we're talking two different tiers when we're talking these quarterbacks here, and Russell Wilson's the one you'd want out of those two. But with that, it's not a competition of just quarterbacks, though. There's a balancing act that needs to be played, and we have another pick coming up. At this point, let's take a look at our roster. So far at running back, we have Alvin Kamara, Travis Etienne, and really that's it. But at wide receiver, we have A.J. Brown, Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, and at quarterback, we have Russell Wilson. So we really need to start filling out our bench at this point. We do have most of our starters locked up, besides the tight end. Like I mentioned, though, tight end is going to be a position that I'm gladly waiting on, so I probably won't even draft a tight end until one of the last picks, so don't expect anything other than that. If I were to draft a tight end now, though, we have options like Logan Thomas still available, Noah Fant. Outside of him, Dallas Goedert. None of these players I'm really all that high on, though. So I do think I am going to stick to my guns and avoid that position for now. So let's take a look at the running backs, the quarterbacks. As for running backs, we have James Robinson. Definitely not stacking Etienne and Robinson. Maybe that might work out for someone crazy enough to do it, but I'm not that crazy. There is one player that definitely sticks out above the rest, and fortunately for us, it's a running back. I definitely would lean on the side of running back here because I think if we miss out on one more run, we're going to run out of players that are even touching the ball. I think we'll be relegated to strictly backups at that point. And there is a running back that isn't projected to start as the 1A in their offense, more the 1B, and they are actually being drafted ahead of the 1A at this point. And I think you know where I'm getting at with this. It's Javonte Williams of the Denver Broncos. And with him still being on the board right here, which round are we in now? What is this, the 8th round? I do think that is going to be cheaper than you get him in other platforms. Let's see if he's on this list. Looking for him. Trey Sermon's on this list. That's going to be another player I'll look for later in the draft. Mike Davis, that was one we missed. Definitely could have got some value out of Mike Davis, who looks like he's already been drafted, though, unfortunately. Travis Etienne, we did get him. No. Well, so as it stands, we may not be getting the greatest value on Javonte Williams, but I think us getting him in the 7th round was a fantastic deal, in my opinion. Short turnaround time, the 8th round pick we have. Let's hop over to wide receivers. There's actually some really good wideouts left. Ones with a lot of upside. Keep in mind with the trio being Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown, and Cooper Kupp, the likeliness of us or any wide receiver cracking our starting lineup is so minimal that it's almost silly to target a player like Tyler Boyd, who, don't get me wrong, is likely to exceed where he's going in this current draft, and being drafted this late, I think that's starting to get in the extreme value territory. But for our roster construction, it really would make no sense because realistically, when would we start Boyd? We really need to target these super high upside type of players. Like I'm eyeing one right now, DeVonta Smith of the Philadelphia Eagles. He's injured right now, and that's partly why he probably fell to this stage of the draft. I know DeVonta Smith about a couple weeks ago was being drafted within the top 30 at the position, actually. So especially with the news of Jalen Reagor not making weight, and there's a lot going for him. And now with his MCL sprain, who's still at this point projected to make it back in the starting lineup to begin the season. An MCL sprain's not the worst thing ever. It's something that could re-aggravate, though. And like I said, though, for our specific roster composition, not needing a player to start early, but needing a player who could expand into something great, not just good, I think DeVonta Smith is probably the perfect fit to our puzzle piece we have going on. So we'll take him. That's our 8th round pick. And our 9th round pick, sticking at wide receiver, we have definitely a lot of players I like here. Wide receiver is so deep this year. It's insane. I could draft 10 more of these guys and still love every single one of them because there's just so many good options, I feel like. But the one, I know I'm getting a bad deal on this, and I know I'm repeating myself that it doesn't matter to me, but Marvin Jones is just somebody who I think is going to be really good this year. And I know we're not getting the best value on him in ESPN drafts. That's a fact. You can get him later in other platforms. That's a fact. But if I want him on my team, this is the round I have to draft him. It's as simple as that. And I am going to pull the trigger on Marvin Jones. This is going to be one of those, technically my guys, Marvin Jones is, which is pretty sad because he's well over 30 now on his 3rd NFL team. He easily could fail, but I just think that the potential upside he brings and his experience is going to be exactly what this Jacksonville offense needs. At this point, though, we're in the double-digit rounds, and most people have left this draft. It's ESPN, so we're getting a lot of auto-drafters. So I'm going to fast-forward it and just get to the picks here so we can just wrap this up. I'll let you guys know exactly who I chose, but for the next round, the 10th round pick, we have options like Nelson Aguilar, Russell Gage is on the board. I'm looking at the wide receivers. I see Darnell Mooney. He's a player that I'm hoping falls to me maybe the 11th round, because I'm going over to the tight end position, seeing if maybe this is the right time to target that. I'm not really seeing it, but I'm actually running out of time, and I'm at risk of losing my pick here, and ultimately, I do snag one of my top draft targets. At this stage, I think I got a great value on him. Latavius Murray in the 11th round. Maybe not the best value, but with literally 3 seconds on the clock before getting auto drafted, I definitely could have done worse. Now, in the 12th round, though, this is where I'm considering a tight end like Rob Gronkowski, but this is the point in the offseason where we're not exactly sure what's going to happen with Rob Gronkowski, and I don't know if it's worth a draft pick just for the potential of him not even playing one snap this season. The other tight ends that are on the board, we have potential options like Blake Jarwin, Gerald Everett, Eric Ebron. These are all these streaming targets, though, so I'm really not going to waste a pick on any of these guys. When it comes to week one, I'm just going to play the matchups anyway. So I will opt, again, not to target a tight end yet. Grab one before I exit the draft. So taking a look at quarterback, I was reminded of a player that I had mentioned while we were looking at the ADP values list on the website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. One quarterback was flying a bit under the radar on ESPN that he wasn't flying under the radar in any other league. That's right, Trey Lance. 12th round, gonna grab Trey Lance. Everyone's about to get their defense and kicker anyway, so if anybody else was cheeky like me and realized it the point I did, Trey Lance could have been gone next round. So I think grabbing him when I did was definitely the right choice for me. Everyone at this point, though, is in auto draft mode, so let's just grab a couple more guys. I know I said I wasn't going to do it, but I'm just going to grab 2 tight ends that I can use and rotate for the first few weeks. Hopefully one develops into a consistent starter, or if not, I can either play the matchups between these two, add another off the waiver wire, drop them, whatever. I took these 2 tight ends in back-to-back rounds, 13 and 14, and the 2 players I chose were players I put on breakout lists previously, Cole Kmet of the Chicago Bears and Adam Trautman of the New Orleans Saints. Both are on my roster. Not sure who I'm going to start week 1 yet, but stay tuned for that. As for defense and kicker, we went and actually got 2 premier options in my opinion. Although I was one of the last defenses to choose, for some reason the New England Patriots defense fell to me. I definitely think they're going to be top 10 this year, so slam dunk in that area. And then when it comes to the kicker, I'll take this kicker literally top 5 if I have a top 5 kicker pick, and it's Robbie Gould of the San Francisco 49ers, who continuously goes under the radar. We don't need kicker analysis though. We're getting in too deep for that. But that's going to do it for this mock draft. Let's kind of go over the players again. We can go position by position, but first let's kind of go through our starting lineup. At the top, the quarterback position, we have our big boy starter, Russell Wilson, one of the better quarterbacks since he was drafted. I'm definitely in the conversation of top 5 when it comes to overall weekly upside, but he definitely has the potential to fall off a cliff. We saw in the second half last season, he was just abysmal. So it's not to say it's a slam dunk pick, but certainly a better quarterback than most of the options out there. So pretty happy with that. I think overall where I got him in drafts and what I'm getting out of him, I would only give that about a 7 out of 10 pick. If I would have invested just a little earlier, I could have got Josh Allen. I know that was available to me. It would have been at the expense of Travis Etienne, but speaking of Travis Etienne, let's move into my running backs. We have Alvin Kamara up at the top. Fantastic value. I got him at 4, so not saying I got him too cheap or anything, but could have potentially got him at 6 because ESPN is a little bonkers when it comes to ADP. Behind him, Travis Etienne. If Travis Etienne, who's currently slated to be behind both Carlos Hyde and James Robinson on the depth chart, if that holds true, we'll just pivot and we'll start one of our other running backs in the place. Those running backs behind Travis Etienne would be Javonte Williams of the Denver Broncos, a running back who's projected to be in the 1B role, but still a rusher who's going to get some volume early and often. So there's a potential from week 1 he produces. If he scores a touchdown, he'll obviously be posting starter level production. So I'm not saying my hand's forced with Etienne, but he's likely going to be the option I begin this season with. There's also Latavius Murray as my 4th running back. Not saying I'm completely thrilled about having him there, but you can never have enough running back depth, and with the lack of overall options at that position and the fact that I primarily focus targeting other positions, I still think for the depth that I got at running back, I'm really not all that bad off. At wide receiver though, this is where I really crushed it in my opinion, starting off with AJ Brown and Justin Jefferson, 2 wide receivers arguably in the top 6, so I could potentially have one of the best wide receiver duos in the entire league, but the fact that I even have Cooper Kupp as icing on the cake, put him in my flex, there's theoretically a chance that in the first week I have 3 top 5 wide receivers. Now the matchup matchups make that a bit unlikely, but I know that each one of them individually has proven to have top 5 upside, so it is something to look forward to if all the stars can align. Behind him, though, on the bench, there are still good receivers to throw in there as well. We have Marvin Jones. Can't forget about him. He's a player who could produce week 1 immediately. So if anybody were to go down with an injury, Marvin Jones as my wide receiver 4 would definitely be the player that I would have as a next man up. But we can't rule out DeVonta Smith being a contributor early and often. He is currently dealing with an MCL injury, and with the depth that I have at the wide receiver position, there's absolutely no reason why I should feel forced to start DeVonta Smith. So me having that type of roster does give me the luxury to be patient with him. So DeVonta Smith is likely going to remain on my bench for the first several weeks until I do feel confident starting him or trading him away or some other wide receiver away so I can fit DeVonta in my starting lineup. Now, just the 3 throwaway pieces. I mean, Trey Lance, I don't want to call him a throwaway piece, but we'll see if I ever even use him. I have Russell Wilson already. Find it hard to believe that I'd ever bench Russell Wilson for Trey Lance, but if I did have both of them producing like quarterback 1 numbers, I would trade one away so I could only focus on starting the other. That would be the best and ideal situation. And with him coming off the board as one of my last picks, I just felt it's a low risk investment for a player I felt confident will break out. And then for tight end, these are guys I'm probably going to get rid of by the first few weeks. Adam Trautman, Kmet, 2 players on my breakout list throughout this season. So not players I'm just high on because they were the ones I ended up in this video, but no, these are players we've been high on throughout the offseason, and I got them virtually for free. But guys, that's going to do it for this video. We really hoped you enjoyed. If you did, how about hitting that like button? If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. Thank you all for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.